Benjamin Netanyahu is no stranger to fighting the political tide, both at home and abroad. But today we have new reason to ask, is the tide finally turning? Since the Israeli Prime Minister launched all-out war on Gaza following the Hamas-led 7th of October attack, Israel's reputation abroad has been tested, and Netanyahu himself faces an international arrest warrant. But vital allies have long remained steadfast, sustaining military, financial, and diplomatic support. And yet there are signs of growing discomfort among Netanyahu's allies overseas. The now 11-week aid blockade causing starvation in Gaza, paired with a new ground offensive aimed at total occupation of the Strip, has drawn various criticism from leaders who previously refrained. In an explosive address to Parliament this afternoon, UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy condemned Israel's blockade as morally unjustifiable and suspended trade talks in its firmest action yet against Netanyahu's government. It follows a joint statement with France and Canada threatening concrete action against Israel's intensifying violence and accusing Netanyahu's government of breaching international law. Their condemnation comes at a time of cooling support from US President Donald Trump, who over the past 2 weeks has stopped bombing Israel's Houthi enemies in Yemen, lifted sanctions on Syria despite Netanyahu's requests, and skipped out Israel on a regional tour. While US state pressure to support Israel may be shrinking, grassroots pressure to oppose their action has not, with mass protests continuing in allied countries despite heavy policing of pro-Palestinian voices. Lammy's speech in the UK comes after 500,000 people marched on the government in the UK on Saturday, calling for an end to Palestinian displacement on the 77th anniversary of the Nakba. So why is Netanyahu ploughing on with his conquest of Gaza in the face of growing global dissent? And how long can he sustain it? Gideon Levy is an acclaimed Israeli journalist and author, and one of the leading commentators on Israeli actions in occupied Palestine. He has repeatedly framed Netanyahu's actions in Gaza not as a bid for Israeli survival, but instead a bid for his own survival in the face of political threats at home. Gideon Levy is joining us now. Gideon, welcome to MEELive.
Thank you for having me.
What political threats does Netanyahu face at home, and how does war, if we can indeed call it war, protect him?
First of all, we can't call it war because it's in this phase for sure just a brutal attack over rebels and uprooted people who are starving, who are dying, who are handicapped. I mean, I can't even describe it. There is no war right now and no fighting. Secondly, for Netanyahu, there are two motives here, and I don't know which one is more dominant. One is, yes, he's being taken hostage by the fascists in his government, and maybe he agrees with them. And he knows very well that if he stops this war, it will stop his political career. But in the same time, I give him the credit that he also believes in really transferring or genociding Gaza as a solution for the Palestinian people. And he believes that without it, there will be no solution. So both go to the same place in which Netanyahu will continue as much as he can, as long as the world will let him continue with this bloodbath, unprecedented, at least not between Israel and Palestine, horrifying and devastating.
You said that while there is political incentive for Netanyahu to continue the war, at least political pressure from within his factions in government, you said that there is genuine belief here that this is about Israeli survival, which is, of course, what Netanyahu has repeatedly claimed. Is that what most people in Israel believe? Do they back this war or this genocide as essential for their survival?
No, here Israel differs, and it is quite divided. There is a very, very strong sentiment to release the hostages. And for this sake, most of the Israelis are ready to stop the war, but they wouldn't care if after releasing the hostages, the war will be renewed in the same way, with the same massacres and crimes. But their first priority is releasing the hostages. There is a camp which I hope is a minority. I guess it is now a minority, but a very big minority, which really is bloodthirst, which really wants this war to continue in order to kill more Palestinians, as many as possible. They don't hide it, by the way. For their sake, I must say, they say it clearly. I almost can say some of them feel some satisfaction by killing Palestinians. For them, there are no innocent people in Gaza, and therefore they all should be slaughtered. This is a part of Israeli society, obviously not the majority, but it's Netanyahu's political base. And Netanyahu's political base wants this war to continue no matter why and no matter in which price.
What then happens to Netanyahu if this war comes to an end? If Netanyahu, is pressured by the US to not just accepting a ceasefire, but beginning talks for long-term peace plans for Gaza, what happens to Netanyahu politically?
It depends much on the circumstances, obviously. If he will cover it up with some kind of plan for the day after, he might find himself new partners in his coalitions instead of the fascists. The center or the center-left might join him for a broader plan, a political, diplomatic broader plan, which he doesn't have and doesn't believe in. Therefore, it seems to be quite far-fetched. But if he will just surrender, give up, show weakness vis-a-vis the pressure, the international pressure, which will grow now rapidly, I hope, then he might lose the next elections. First of all, his government will fall apart. Then he has to go to elections. And in elections, there is no guarantee that he will lose, but there is a big chance that he will lose the next elections.
But aren't the population in Israel getting tired of war? I mean, this is not just even a war against Israel. There have been strikes exchanged with Yemen, with Lebanon, with Syria. This has been going on for 19 months. I mean, is this really, really bolstering his support at home? Isn't it taking a toll on Israel's economy, on morale in the army?
Look, his political base is so solid that nothing can affect it. They will support him, especially as long as he is leading Israel to war, to bloodshed, to mass killing of Palestinians. They will forgive him for anything and for everything. Like populist leaders, he has a very, very solid base of supporters who will follow him almost blindly. The problem is that this base is not enough. He needs to broaden it. And then all kinds of questions are rising, and then his future is not guaranteed. But his basic camp of supporters will go after him, whatever he does, as long as he does not stop the war, as long as he does not surrender, as they will see it, to the Palestinians.
See, from the outside, it feels almost today as though there are signs that the tide is turning. Donald Trump has toned down his support. He skipped Israel on his Middle East tour. And today we have seen really, really strong words from the UK government. But we also saw earlier on the show an MP in the UK Parliament replied to David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary. He said, we all know that Netanyahu doesn't give a damn what we say here in the UK Parliament. Is this true? Is this pressure, are these words hurting Netanyahu at home? Is it likely to alter his approach in Gaza?
Unfortunately, this MP was right. Netanyahu doesn't give a damn to what people in the UK or elsewhere are saying. He would care a lot if the United Kingdom and others will turn from condemnations and quite hollow words into actions. Taking measures, this will have consequences, especially if it will really create a new situation in which Israel will not only be taken accountable for the crimes, but will also start to be punished for the crimes. And then it might create a pressure in Israeli society, who is not, all of it at least part of it is not ready to pay a price for this genocidal war. And then will be the moment in which the world will have an effect. But it is still a long way to go. As long as it's only talkings or suspending some negotiations about some commercial deals, most of the Israelis will not feel it. And in any case, most of the Israelis are sure that the whole world is anti-Semite, no matter what Israel is doing. So why wouldn't they care? It's your fault, not ours.
That was going to be my next question, actually, about how it's received by people in Israel. Do they see the growing discontent around the world, not just of politicians, but by massive proportions of populations who are taking to the street and protesting the treatment of Palestinians by Israel? Do the general Israeli public, do they see this? Does it affect their outlook?
They see it, but they see it through very, very influential filters. The Israeli media and other agencies made it very convenient for the Israelis to believe that those all are anti-Semites, those all want only one thing, and this is to exterminate the state of Israel. They want to push us to the ocean, no matter what we are doing. And therefore, if it doesn't matter what we are doing, then we shouldn't also take them seriously because they're anti-Semites. I mean, Israel, in a very sophisticated way, is moving the blame from itself, which should be the case, to its critics. It is you who are so wrong morally because you are anti-Semite. And it's very hard to convince an average Israeli that most of the critics are people of conscience who care even in many cases about Israel. But they can't see this war continuing and this mass killing and the starvation and the babies. No person of conscience can stand still vis-a-vis those horrible images and scenes taking place. But the Israelis make themselves their life very easy. You are anti-Semites, and therefore I don't care what you say.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the picture that I'm getting from you is that Netanyahu faces political pressure from his own government to continue this war. He doesn't face moral pressure from his population to end the war, and he doesn't care about international pressure to do so either. Is that correct? You're nodding.
Well, with some small corrections, but you are correct.
So then what?
Netanyahu faces criticism, a lot of criticism, and protests and demonstrations non-stop going. The media, most of the media is totally against him, but this is not his political basis, and therefore he can ignore it. He does not need those so-called liberals and intellectuals and leftists and even center-leftists. He doesn't need them because they will not vote for him in any case.
Right.
So he can ignore them. Same for the international community. He can ignore the international community as long as it is limited to hollow condemnations, which Israel is going through for years. And with all the respect to the EU, to the UK, and in many cases also the United States, it never crossed this line of hollow condemnations. If the world will turn into actions, into taking measures against Israel, this can be a game changer, absolutely, and might bring the end of the war, and maybe even more than this.
If one of the reasons that Netanyahu, is interested in prolonging the war is that, the people opposing the war are not his votership, and so therefore, as soon as the war comes to an end and there are democratic elections, he could lose power. Do people in Israel not see that? Do people see that this war is a war for Netanyahu's political survival more than it is a war for their survival?
Many Israelis see it so, sure. At least half of them see it so. And the other half accepts Netanyahu and believes that Netanyahu is doing it for the sake of Israel, for the sake of security, and all kinds of nonsense like this. But don't forget that even the camp that wants this war to end in Israel, its main, not the only, but its main motivation is releasing the hostages. They want the war to finish because of the hostages, which is a very, very important and moral goal. But unfortunately, it's almost the only goal. The crimes, the bloodshed. For those people, there are only 58 people alive and dead in Gaza. Only the hostages. All the rest don't count. For many Israelis, the fate of the Palestinian people doesn't touch them, especially not after the 7th of October, because most of the Israelis believe until this very moment that the 7th of October enables Israel to do whatever it wants without any limits. There are no moral limits, no legal limits, nothing. And unfortunately, many Israelis still believe in it, even in the camp of the central left. They want the war to end in order to release the hostages, nothing but this.
What then does the future look like for Palestinians, for Gaza, for the West Bank, even if Netanyahu is someday to leave power? What do the alternatives look like, and what do they mean for Palestinians?
I just listened to Dr. Baraguti, who was talking before me in your show, and I was happy to hear that he is so optimistic that the Palestinians are so close to liberation, to self-determination, to ending their catastrophe. Unfortunately, I cannot share this optimism with my friend Mustafa because I still don't see any chance for any kind of solution right now. In Israel, it's even not discussed. It's not on the table. It's not in the public discourse. Nobody speaks about the solution except of transfer and extermination. Nobody speaks about the two-state solution, leave alone about the one-state solution. Those terms are not even on the table. And in the Palestinian side, there are the same problems. They also lack leadership. They are not united, as you know. They are divided like never before. I don't see the energy. I don't see the leaders. I don't see the plan which will take us to a better future right now. It might come. Maybe the pressure of the world will bring it. But right now, I don't see it because it's off the table. You'll be amazed how off the table it is in Israel. Among all the camps, nobody speaks now about the solution.
What would it
A
take?
real solution.
What would it take? What would it take for you to see real hope going forwards?
If we'll face a new generation, and it shouldn't be a new generation, but a new leadership in both parties, both the Palestinians and Israel needs reshuffle in the leadership and reshuffle in the beliefs. And I don't see it happening by itself. It will have to come through a massive international pressure. Israelis will not wake up one morning and say, oh, this occupation is so ugly, let's put an end to it. It will not happen. We are farther from this than ever. And therefore, I'm a great believer of international pressure, like it was with South Africa. It was extremely effective with South Africa. It should be as effective with the second apartheid state, namely Israel.
Gideon Levy, thank you for your perspective.